Before you hear the story, before you judge what I did, I want you to do something for me. Picture the one thing in your life you built with your own hands. Maybe it's a business, a family, a bookshelf in your garage. Something that exists only because you poured your own sweat, your own soul into it. Now imagine your own family, the people who are supposed to be your foundation, stealing it from you. Not just stealing it, but setting it on fire, and then telling the whole world you were the one who lit the match. If you can understand that feeling, that deep hollow burn in the center of your chest, then you're ready to hear what I have to say. My name is Cole, and this is the story of how I took back my life by destroying the one my father and brother built on my ashes. They say the devil is in the details. In my world, the world of fine dining, God is in the details, too. The precise temperature of the water for poaching a pear. The exact number of seconds to sear a scallop. The faint scent of rosemary and thyme that greets you when you walk through the door. I lived in those details. For 15 years I was the heart and the hands of the Beaumont Restaurant Group. My father, Albert, was the face. My older brother, Jay, was the calculator. And I was the engine in the basement, the one covered in grease and sweat, making the whole grand machine run. It was a role I never questioned. It was family. The end came on a Tuesday. I remember it was raining, a cold, miserable November drizzle that made the city look like it had been crying. I was in the kitchen of our flagship, Albert's Table, personally overseeing the prep for a new autumn menu. I'd been working on a duck confit recipe for 6 weeks, tweaking the salt cure, the aromatics, the rendering time. It was perfect. I felt that buzz, that electric hum of creation that every chef chases. That's when Maria, our hostess, came into the kitchen, her face pale. She was twisting the corner of her apron, a nervous habit. She said my father and Jay wanted to see me. Upstairs, in the main office. Now I wiped my hands on my towel, a flicker of annoyance in my gut. An unscheduled meeting on a prep day was a cardinal sin. The office was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the main dining room. It was Albert's sanctuary. All dark wood, leather chairs, and framed magazine covers featuring his smiling face. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk. Jay was standing beside him, leaning against it, arms crossed. He had that smug, predatory stillness he always got before he was about to screw someone over in a negotiation. I'd seen him do it to landlords, to suppliers, to fired employees. I had never, not once, imagined I'd be the one on the other side of the desk. My father didn't look at me. He was staring at a stack of papers in front of him, his jaw tight. He looked older than he had that morning. Smaller. Cole, he began, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. We have a problem. I looked from him to Jay. Jay's lips curled into something that was almost a smile. A big problem. Little brother, he said. He pushed the stack of papers across the desk towards me. They were financial reports. Ledgers. Our quarterly profit and loss statements. But they were wrong. The numbers were twisted. Inflated food costs, skimmed profits, expenses that made no sense. It looked like someone was systematically bleeding the company dry. What is this? I asked, my voice confused. These numbers are garbage. Our food cost is 31%, not 42%. Where did these invoices come from? Jay laughed. It was a short, ugly sound. That's what we were hoping you could tell us, Cole. They came from your approved vendor lists. Paid from the kitchen operations budget. The budget you control. The cold started in my stomach and spread through my veins. It was the feeling of a trapdoor swinging open beneath your feet. I looked at the signatures on the bottom of the forged invoices. They were a clumsy, almost insulting imitation of my own. I had never seen these documents in my life. This is a joke, right? I said, my voice barely a whisper. You know I didn't do this. Jay, look at this garbage. You and I go over the books every month. We did, Jay corrected, pushing himself off the desk. He began to pace, like a lawyer delivering his closing argument to a jury he already owned. But I started noticing discrepancies. Small things at first. So Dad and we hired an outside firm, a forensic accountant, to take a quiet look. Turns out, our brilliant chef has been cooking more than just ducks. I stared at him, my mind struggling to catch up. A forensic accountant. An outside firm. This had been planned. This had been going on for weeks, maybe months, right under my nose while I was perfecting sauces and designing menus. while I was building their empire. Dad, I said, turning to him, pleading with my eyes. He was my father. He taught me how to make my first omelet in his diner kitchen when I was 8 years old. He had to know this was a lie. He finally looked up at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was a cold, hard, reptilian resolve. He had already passed sentence. I built this company from nothing, Cole, he said, his voice heavy with fake sorrow. My name is on that door. I can't let you, my own son, destroy it. The board agrees. You're out. Effective immediately. The board. Our board consisted of my father, my brother, and 2 of my father's old cronies who would vote for a ham sandwich if Albert told them it was good for business. This wasn't a board decision. This was an execution. Out? I stammered. Out of what? This is my kitchen, my staff, my recipes. My life's work is in this building. Not anymore, Jay said, stopping his pacing to stand right in front of me. He was taller than me, broader. He'd always used his size to intimidate people. You're a liability. A thief. You're lucky we're keeping this in the family. We could press charges. Imagine what that would do to your precious reputation. The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. They weren't just firing me. They were branding me. They were creating a story that would make me untouchable. The brilliant chef who got greedy. The artist who couldn't be trusted with money. It was simple. It was believable. And it was a lie. I felt a surge of white-hot rage. I wanted to launch myself across the desk, to grab the front of Jay's $1,000 suit and scream the truth in his face. But then I looked at my father again. He was already turning away, shuffling the papers, dismissing me. I was a problem that had been solved. In that moment I understood. The rage wouldn't work. They were prepared for rage. They weren't prepared for what was coming. A cold clarity washed over me. The anger didn't vanish. It hardened. It cooled and sharpened into a single lethal point. You'll have to escort him out, Jay, my father said, not even looking up. And make sure he doesn't go back to the kitchen. Jay put a hand on my shoulder. Come on, Cole. Time to go. I shook his hand off. I walked out of that office without another word. I didn't look back. I walked past the dining room, past the bar I had designed, past the wine cellar I had stocked. I could hear the familiar, comforting clatter from the kitchen, my kitchen, and it felt like it was a million miles away. As I stepped out into that cold November rain, leaving my entire life behind me, I made a silent promise to myself. They thought they had buried me. They had no idea they had just planted a seed. The first week was a blur of disbelief and a hollow, aching void. I'd call my sous chef, Miguel, a man I'd mentored for 5 years, and the call would go straight to voicemail. I'd text Sarah, our pastry chef, whose daughter's birthday parties I'd attended, and get no reply. My life, my entire social and professional circle, had been surgically excised. Jay and my father hadn't just fired me. They had erased me. The story they were spinning was brutally effective. I heard it whispered back to me through the 1 or 2 friends brave enough to still speak to me. Cole got sloppy. Cole had a gambling problem. Cole was skimming to fund a lavish lifestyle. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and my reputation was bleeding out on the marble floor of the restaurant I'd built. My apartment, a place I'd barely spent time in because I lived at the restaurant, suddenly felt like a prison cell. The silence was the loudest thing in it. For 15 years my days were a symphony of noise, the roar of the burners, the clang of pans, the rhythmic chop of knives, the shouts of orders, the laughter of my kitchen crew. Now, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. I tried to do what they told you to do in a crisis. I tried to get my life in order. I updated my resume, a document I hadn't needed since I was 19. I started drafting a business plan for a small place of my own, a little bistro, something I could run myself. The dream was a pale imitation of what I'd lost, but it was a flicker of light in the crushing dark. Then reality hit. I took my plan to the first bank. The loan officer was friendly, encouraging. He'd eaten at Albert's table a dozen times. He knew my work. He said he'd run the numbers and get back to me. A week later, a form letter arrived. After careful consideration, I went to another bank, a smaller credit union. The manager there was more direct. He looked at my application, then looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Cole," he said, his voice laced with pity. "I can't touch this." The whispers. Your father is a very respected man in this city. The story is that you're a financial risk. A big one. The smear campaign wasn't just whispers, it was a scorched earth policy. They had salted the earth, ensuring nothing of mine could ever grow again. I was ruined. Isolated. The anger that had been a sharp point on that first day had cooled into a solid, heavy lump of despair in my gut. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every sacrifice I'd made, every holiday I'd missed, every ounce of creativity I'd poured into their business, their name, their legacy. To understand the depth of their betrayal, you have to understand where we started. It wasn't always the Beaumont Group, a corporate entity with a board of directors. It started as Al's Place, a tiny 20-seat diner my father bought with his army pension. I was 16 when he handed me my first apron. He wasn't the titan of industry then. He was just Al, a man with a good palate and a bad back who dreamed of having the best steak frites in the city. I was his legs, his hands, his apprentice. I fell in love with the chaos of the kitchen. I went to culinary school, came back brimming with ideas. I'm the one who convinced him to change the name to Albert's Table, to lean into the fine dining concept. I'm the one who developed the menu, who trained the staff, who schmoozed the food critics. We were a team. He was the showman out front, and I was the artist in the back. Jay came along later. He'd gone to business school, gotten some fancy degree, and looked at our little restaurant with disdain. To him it wasn't a passion, it was an underperforming asset. He talked about margins, scalability, and brand synergy. He convinced Dad to expand, to take on investors, to become the Beaumont Group. I had my doubts, but Dad was mesmerized by Jay's confidence, by his talk of building an empire. And I was the good son. I trusted my father. The flashbacks came at me in the dark, sharp and painful. I remembered one night, years ago, after we'd just opened our second location. We were facing a cash flow crisis. A major supplier was threatening to cut us off. Jay wanted to switch to a cheaper, inferior purveyor of vegetables. He said no one would notice. I refused. I stayed up for 2 straight nights, personally calling every single farmer I knew, negotiating, pleading, cobbling together a new supply chain of small local growers. It saved us. The quality of our food actually improved. At the next board meeting, Jay presented my work as his own brilliant cost-neutral quality sourcing initiative. My father beamed at him, patting his back. When I tried to speak up, my father gave me a look that said, "Don't embarrass your brother, we're a team." So I stayed quiet. I swallowed the bitterness and went back to my kitchen. That was my pattern. I did the work. Jay took the credit. My father enabled it. I see it so clearly now. I was the workhorse, and they were the ones riding me. I also remembered the small things. My father, tasting a new sauce I'd spent days on, and saying, "It's good, son. But is it profitable?" Jay walking through my kitchen in his pristine suit, pointing out that we were using too much saffron, that we could use a cheaper cut of beef if we just masked it with a heavier sauce. They saw my passion as a flaw, my dedication to quality as a financial leak that needed to be plugged. They didn't understand that the quality was the business. It was the only thing that made us special. I was the soul of the company, and they had come to see me as a bug in their spreadsheet. One rainy afternoon, about a month into my exile, I hit my lowest point. I was sitting on my floor, surrounded by bank rejection letters. My savings were dwindling. The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in. I was eating a bowl of instant ramen, the irony, a bitter taste in my mouth. I, a chef who had earned 2 Michelin stars for my father's restaurant, was eating processed noodles and powdered broth. I looked at a photo on my mantelpiece. It was from the opening night of Albert's Table, 15 years ago. Me, a skinny kid with too much hair, arms slung around my dad. We were both grinning, exhausted, and triumphant. A tear rolled down my cheek and fell into my sad little bowl of soup. That's when the rage came back. Not the hot, explosive kind, but something different. It was a cold, quiet fire. It wasn't despair anymore, it was resolve. They had taken my past. They would not take my future. I stood up, threw the ramen in the trash, and took a shower. As the hot water washed over me, a plan began to form. Not a plan for a small bistro, a plan for a reckoning. And then, as if the universe had heard my silent declaration of war, my phone rang. The number was unlisted. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Cole Beaumont? The voice was gravelly, familiar, but I couldn't place it. Who is this? I asked, my voice wary. My name is Peter Gallo. I froze. Peter Gallo. The name was legend in the city's restaurant scene. He was the owner of Gallo's, the iconic Italian institution that had been the reigning king of fine dining for 40 years. He was also my father's most bitter, most hated rival. Their feud was the stuff of industry lore. They'd started around the same time, competed for the same awards, the same staff, the same customers. They despised each other with a passion that bordered on religious fervor. What do you want? I said, my guard immediately up. He chuckled. A dry, rasping sound, straight to the point. I like that. Your father never was. Always had to give a speech first. He paused. I heard what happened, the story your family is telling. And you're calling to gloat. Don't be an idiot, kid. Gloating is for amateurs. I'm calling because I don't believe it. Not for a second. I was stunned into silence. You want to know why? He continued, not waiting for an answer. Because about 10 years ago, I came into Albert's table undercover. Wore a bad toupee and everything. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Your father was out front, glad-handing everyone, looking like the lord of the manor. But I tasted your food. The bouillabaisse, the balance of fennel and saffron, the quality of the fish, it was perfect. A thief can't cook like that. A crook doesn't have that kind of patience, that kind of soul. Your father is a peacock, your brother is a vulture. But you, kid, you're the artist. And they were always jealous of that. I didn't know what to say. To be seen, to be understood, by my father's greatest enemy. It was a dizzying, disorienting feeling. I'm not calling to offer you a shoulder to cry on, Peter said, his voice turning sharp and all business. Sympathy doesn't pay the rent. I'm calling to make you an offer. I own a building, a prime piece of real estate, right across the street from Albert's table. The lease just came up. I want to bankroll you. We build a new restaurant. Your name, your kitchen, your menu, my money. I was speechless. Across the street. It wasn't just a business proposal. It was a declaration of war. Why? I finally managed to ask. Why would you do this for me? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was low and full of a cold, ancient anger. Because for 30 years, your father has been a thorn in my side. He's a showman, not a chef. A marketer, not a restaurateur. He built a brand, not a legacy. And watching you, his own son, with your talent, take him down. Well, for me, that's better than any Michelin star. We're not just going to build a competitor, Cole. We're going to build a dynasty killer. The question is, are you in? I looked around my tiny, silent apartment. I looked at the stack of rejection letters. I thought of my father's cold eyes and my brother's smug smile. The cold fire in my gut roared to life. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was providence. It was a weapon, handed to me in my darkest hour. I'm in, I said, my voice steady and clear. When do we start? My first meeting with Peter Gallo was not in a boardroom. It was in the back of his restaurant, in a small, cluttered office that smelled of garlic, old paper, and cigar smoke. He was a short, stocky man in his late 60s, with a face like a roadmap of Italy and eyes that missed nothing. He didn't offer me coffee. He poured 2 small glasses of Amaro. First rule, he said, pushing a glass towards me. Never trust a man who doesn't drink with you. Your father drinks club soda with a lime. Explains a lot. I took a sip. It was bitter, complex, and warming. So he said, leaning back in his creaky leather chair. You're in. Good. But my money doesn't come cheap. I'm not investing in a chef. I can find 100 good chefs. I'm investing in an assassin. I need to know what weapons you're bringing to this fight. Besides a good recipe for risotto. This was the moment. The pivot. He was testing me, seeing if I was just a heartbroken kid, or a genuine asset. For the past month, I had done nothing but think. I had dissected every conversation, every financial report I could remember, every operational decision made over the last decade. I hadn't just been a chef. I had been the silent, observant engine of the whole machine. I knew where every wire led, where every screw was loose. I reached into my worn leather satchel and pulled out a thick, black, moleskine notebook. I placed it on the desk between us. It was heavy, filled with 15 years of my life. "What's this?" Peter asked, eyeing it. "Your secret recipes." "It's more than that," I said. I opened it to a random page. My neat, precise handwriting filled every line. "I call it my kitchen Bible." Yes, every recipe I ever created for the Beaumont Group is in here, in detail. But so is everything else. I started flipping through the pages, my voice calm and steady. "This section, it's our suppliers. Not just their names and numbers. It's the cell phone number of the farmer who grows the heirloom tomatoes. The one who gives us first pick, because I helped his son get an apprenticeship. It's the name of the fisherman's wife, the one I send a birthday card to every year. It's a record of every favor owed, every relationship built on trust, not on a purchase order. Relationships Jay tried to ruin a dozen times with his aggressive cost-cutting measure." I flipped to another section, tabbed with blue sticky notes. "This is our staff. Every cook, every server, every dishwasher. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their ambitions. I know who is loyal to my father's paycheck and who is loyal to the craft. I know who Miguel, my sous chef, resents Jay for passing him over for a promotion. I know that our head sommelier, a genius named Isabel, feels creatively stifled by my father's obsession with overpriced, overrated Bordeaux." Peter leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with interest. He took the notebook and started leafing through it himself. "And this," I said, pointing to a section at the back, filled with spreadsheets and notes I'd copied from memory and old emails I'd saved. "This is the real secret. It's a record of every stupid financial decision they ever made. The $500,000 rebranding that was just a vanity project for my father. The disastrous ghost kitchen concept Jay launched without any market research that bled us dry for a year. The consulting fees paid to a shell corporation that I'm pretty sure is just Jay's slush fund. I didn't cook the books, Peter. I was the only one who actually knew what was in them." Peter closed the notebook with a soft thud. He looked at me, a slow smile spreading across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found the perfect hunting partner. "Kid," he said, taking a long sip of his Amaro. "This isn't a Bible, it's a goddamn guided missile." That was the beginning. Peter assembled his war council. He introduced me to his lawyer, a shark named Marcus, who specialized in corporate warfare. He brought in a PR guru, a sharp, elegant woman named Chloe, who could spin a hurricane into a gentle breeze. And he introduced me to a construction manager, a gruff old bear of a man named Frank, who could build a palace out of spite. We spent the next 2 months in that back office, planning. It was the most intense, most invigorating work of my life. It wasn't about cooking anymore. It was about strategy. It was a chess game, and we were planning our opening moves. The plan was a multi-pronged assault, designed to dismantle the Beaumont Group from the outside in. First, the location. The building Peter owned was directly across the street from Albert's table. It had been a failed clothing boutique, but it had good bones. Frank, the construction manager, drew up plans for a spectacular renovation. We'd have a state-of-the-art open kitchen, a custom-built bar, and floor-to-ceiling windows that would look directly into my father's dining room. It was an act of pure glorious provocation. Chloe, the PR genius, planned the reveal. No press releases. Just a massive banner covering the entire building. We settled on a name for the restaurant. Not something angry like Revenge. Something better. Something that cut deeper. We would call it Legacy. It was a direct challenge to the name my father had built his identity on. It posed a question: whose legacy was it? Really? Second, the supply chain. This was my domain. Armed with Peter's capital and my kitchen Bible, I went on a tour. I didn't send emails or make calls. I drove out to the farms. I walked the docks. I sat in the kitchens of my old suppliers. I didn't just offer them more money. I offered them partnership. I offered them respect. I offered them a chef who understood their product, who would honor it. I secured exclusive contracts with the 3 most important purveyors in the region: the organic produce farm, the artisanal cheesemaker, and the supplier of dry-aged prime beef. These were the pillars of the Albert's Table menu. Without them, my father's flagship would be crippled. Third, the talent. This was the most delicate part. I couldn't be seen as a poacher. Chloe's strategy was brilliant. We wouldn't make offers yet. We would let the construction and the rumors do the work for us. The new restaurant, Legacy, would be a beacon. A signal to every disgruntled, underappreciated artist in the Beaumont system that there was another option. A better one. I started a private group chat, just a few key people I trusted implicitly. Miguel, my old sous chef. Isabel, the sommelier. A few of the veteran line cooks. I didn't ask them to leave. I just told them what I was building. I told them I was building a home for chefs, not for businessmen. The seeds were planted. Fourth, the legal and financial attack. This was Marcus's territory. He took my notes on Jay's slush fund and the other financial irregularities and began a quiet, deep dive. He hired a private investigator, a former financial crimes detective, to trace the money. "We don't use this unless we have to," Marcus said, his eyes cold. "This is the nuclear option. We gut the business first. This is for salting the earth afterwards." I felt a pang of something. Guilt. No, it wasn't guilt. It was the last ghost of the man I used to be, the son who just wanted his father's approval. I looked at Peter. He seemed to read my mind. "They drew first blood, kid," he said gruffly. "They used a lie to destroy your life. You are going to use the truth to dismantle theirs. There's a difference. Now stop thinking like a son, and start thinking like a general." He was right. This wasn't family anymore. This was a war they had started. I was just going to finish it. The planning phase was over. It was time to make our first move. The first shot was fired on a crisp, clear Monday morning in March. Under the cover of darkness, Frank's construction crew had unfurled a banner that covered the entire 3-story facade of the building across from Albert's table. It was simple, elegant, and brutal. A deep charcoal background with clean white letters. It said Legacy, a new standard in dining, from Chef Cole Beaumont, coming soon. I was there, parked a block away, sipping coffee in my car. I watched the sun come up. I watched the morning commuters stop and stare. I watched the staff of Albert's table arrive for their shifts, pointing, whispering, pulling out their phones. And then, at precisely 8:15 a.m., I saw my father's black sedan pull up. He got out, looked up at the banner, and just stood there, frozen on the sidewalk, for a full minute. Then he looked around, his eyes scanning the street as if searching for me. I ducked down in my seat, my heart pounding, not with fear but with a cold, thrilling surge of adrenaline. The game had begun. My phone rang less than an hour later. It was Jay. I let it ring 3 times before answering, just as Chloe had instructed. "Stay calm, let him do the talking. The one who gets angry, loses," she'd said. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He screamed into the phone, no greeting, no preamble, just pure, undiluted rage. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Good morning to you too, brother. To what do I owe the pleasure? Don't play games with me, you little thief. You put up that ridiculous sign. What is this, some kind of joke? Who's backing you? You couldn't get a loan for a hot dog cart." "It's not a joke, Jay," I said, my voice as calm and even as a placid lake. "It's my new project. I'm excited about it. You should come to the opening. If you can get a reservation." I could hear him sputtering on the other end. He was so used to being the one in control, the one who intimidated. My calm was dismantling him. "You are nothing without us. We made you. And who the hell is this Chef Cole Beaumont? You're a Beaumont. You hear me? You're dragging our name through the mud with this stunt." "That's where you're wrong, Jay," I said, and the coldness in my own voice surprised me. "I'm not a Beaumont anymore. You and Dad made that very clear. I'm just a chef. And as for the name, I think it's about time I made one for myself." I hung up before he could respond. The initial reaction from my father and brother was exactly what Peter and I had predicted: arrogant dismissal. I heard through the grapevine that at their staff meeting, my father had called me a confused, bitter boy who was being manipulated by that old dinosaur Gallo. He assured everyone that my little project would run out of money and fold within 6 months. They underestimated me. It was the same mistake they had always made. They thought I was just the cook, the temperamental artist. They couldn't conceive that I could be a strategist. But then the second phase of our attack began. The supply chain coup. It started subtly. 2 weeks after the banner went up, my father's head chef, a man they'd hired to replace me, a journeyman with a decent reputation but no soul, tried to place his weekly order with Green Meadow Farms, our exclusive supplier of microgreens and heirloom vegetables for over a decade. The owner, a man named Henderson, who I'd shared countless beers with, politely informed him that they had signed a new exclusivity contract. He couldn't sell to them anymore, at any price. The call from Jay came within the hour. This time, he was less shouty, more menacing. "What did you do, Cole? Did you threaten Henderson?" "I didn't threaten anyone, Jay. I made him a better offer. It's called business. You, of all people, should understand that." A week later, it was the beef. Dry-aged prime ribeye, the signature dish at Albert's table. The supplier told them their entire upcoming inventory had been bought out, by me. They were forced to switch to a lower grade, commercially available product. It was good, but it wasn't the same. The regulars, the ones with educated palates, started to notice. The whispers began online. "Had the ribeye at Albert's last night. Something's off. Service was fine, but the quality seems to have slipped since Chef Cole left." Every whisper was a small victory. Every bad review was a crack in their facade. The panic at the Beaumont Group started to set in. Jay, in his desperation, became a tyrant. He instituted new draconian rules in the kitchen. He accused the staff of wasting ingredients to cover for the drop in quality. He started holding confrontational meetings, demanding to know who was talking to me. Of course, this had the opposite effect. It drove his best people further away, right into my waiting arms. My private group chat with Miguel and Isabel became a daily intelligence briefing. Miguel would tell me about the chaos in the kitchen, the low morale, the cheap ingredients they were being forced to use. He tried to get me to use frozen fish for the special. "Cole," he texted me one night, followed by a string of angry emojis. I almost walked out right then. Isabel told me about the dining room. Jay was pressuring the servers to push the most expensive, high-margin wines regardless of food pairings, to make up for the financial shortfall. "He's turning this place into a steakhouse in a strip mall," she wrote. "He's destroying everything you built. Be patient," I would write back to them. "The time is coming. We're building you a home." Meanwhile, across the street, Legacies was rising. Frank was a magician. The construction was loud, visible, and fast. Chloe's PR strategy was to make the construction itself a news story. We invited lifestyle bloggers and architectural journalists to tour the site. We didn't talk about the feud. We talked about our vision. A restaurant built around a philosophy of transparency and quality. The open kitchen wasn't just a design choice. It was a statement. We had nothing to hide. The materials were all locally sourced, reclaimed wood from a local barn, steel forged in a workshop 2 towns over. The story was irresistible. The disgraced chef, rising from the ashes, building an authentic, honest temple to food, right in the face of the corporate behemoth that cast him out. My father and Jay tried to counter. They launched a new PR campaign of their own, full of discounts and 2-for-1 specials. It reeked of desperation. It cheapened their brand. They were a fine dining establishment acting like a chain restaurant. It was a fatal error. They were panicking, and their panic was making them sloppy. They were playing checkers, and I was playing a long, cold game of chess, and my checkmate was just a few moves away. The final 2 weeks before the opening of Legacies were a blur of controlled chaos. While Frank's crew put the finishing touches on the dining room, the polished concrete floors, the soft leather banquettes, the single perfect orchid on each table, I was living in my new kitchen. It was magnificent. A cathedral of stainless steel and raw power. The Vulcan ranges I'd always dreamed of. A walk-in cooler the size of my old apartment. It was a chef's paradise, and it was all mine. But a kitchen is nothing without its army. The time had come to make my move. The Great Exodus, as Peter called it. I didn't send a mass email or make a public announcement. I did it the way it should be done, with respect. I invited Miguel, my former sous chef, to see the new kitchen. He walked in, his eyes wide. He ran his hand over the cool steel of the prep stations. He looked at the equipment, the space, the light. I didn't have to say a word. "He's destroying the soul of that place, Cole," Miguel said, his voice quiet. "He's timing us on how fast we plate. He's complaining about the cost of fresh herbs. It's not a kitchen anymore, it's a factory." "This is a kitchen, Miguel," I said. "And I need a general to help me run it. I'm not just offering you a job, I'm offering you a partnership. A share of the profits, the respect you've earned." He looked at me, and I saw a decade of frustration melt away from his face. He just nodded, a huge smile spreading across his face. When do I start, chef? Next was Isabel, the sommelier. I met her at a quiet wine bar. I didn't show her the restaurant. I showed her my wine list. Not the list itself, but the philosophy behind it. Small independent vineyard, bold, interesting choices. A cellar built on passion, not prestige. And I showed her the budget Peter had given me. It was triple what my father had ever allowed her. Jay wants me to sell more cases of that overpriced champagne that the critics hate, but Dad got a deal on, she said.
Disgust in her voice.
He doesn't care about the pairings, he just cares about the margin. I care about the story, Isabel, I told her. Every bottle tells a story. I want you to be our storyteller. She raised her glass. To a new chapter, she said. The call went out. The pastry chef who cried when Jay called her delicate sugar work a waste of time. The veteran line cook who was the heart of the old kitchen, who I knew was 2 years from retirement and wanted to end his career in a place he could be proud of. The maitre d', a man of impeccable grace, who was horrified by the new fast casual attitude my father was pushing. One by one they said yes. They all gave their notice on the same day, a Friday, 2 weeks before my opening. It was a coordinated, devastating blow. I can only imagine the scene in my father's office. The panic, the fury. They hadn't just lost staff, they had lost their core, their institutional memory, the people who actually made the place run. My father for the first time tried to reach out to me directly. A voicemail appeared on my phone late that night. His voice was not the cold, commanding tone of the patriarch. It was thin, wheedling, and laced with a manipulative sorrow that I now saw right through. Cole, he began, his voice cracking slightly. Son, this has gone too far. Peter Gallo is a snake. You know that. He's using you to get to me. Don't let him poison you against your own family. We can fix this. Just call me. We can talk. This isn't you. This isn't you. The words hung in the air. He was right. The old Cole, the one who would have swallowed the insult and gone back to work, was gone. They had killed him in that office. This new version of me, the one forged in betrayal and financed by revenge, was all that was left. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. Jay tried a different tactic. He went on the offensive. He leaked a story to a friendly gossip columnist that I was an unethical monster, a thief who not only cooked the books but was now stealing my family's loyal employees. Chloe was prepared. She had our counter-narrative ready to go. She gave an exclusive interview to the city's most respected food journalist. The headline was perfect. Talent follows a vision. Why the best are fleeing Albert's table for a new legacy. The article didn't mention the feud. It was all about me, my vision, my dedication to the craft. It quoted Miguel and Isabel, not bad-mouthing their old employer, but passionately talking about the new, exciting project they were a part of. We were the future. My father's restaurant was the past. The power had shifted. The fear was no longer mine. It was theirs. They were trapped in a burning building, and I was the one standing outside with the only key. The city was buzzing. The reservations for legacies were booked solid for the next 3 months, and we hadn't even served a single plate of food. My father and brother thought they were in a family squabble. They were about to find out they were in a war they had already lost. Opening night. The air in Legacies was electric. It was more than just the nervous energy of a new restaurant. It was the hum of victory. The room was beautiful, even better than I had imagined. Soft light glinted off the polished glassware. The low thrum of conversation and quiet jazz filled the space. Through the massive front windows, I could see the entrance to Albert's table across the street. It was disturbingly quiet. A few lonely figures trickled in and out, but the usual buzz was gone. It looked like a museum after closing time. My kitchen was a well-oiled machine. Miguel was at my side, a silent, steady presence. My team, my hand-picked army of artists, moved with a fluid grace and a shared purpose. We weren't just cooking. We were making a statement. Every plate that left the pass was a testament to our new freedom, a miniature work of art. The city's top food critic was at table 7. A delegation of chefs from other top restaurants was at the bar. Chloe had orchestrated the evening perfectly. It was less a restaurant opening and more a coronation. I was in the middle of plating our signature dish, a slow-braised short rib that I'd perfected over the last month when Isabel appeared at the pass, her usual calm demeanor slightly frayed. "Cole," she said in a low voice. "We have a problem. They're here." I knew who they were. I wiped my hands on my apron, took a deep breath, and walked out of my kitchen. And there they were. My father Albert and my brother Jay, standing just inside the entrance. They hadn't made a reservation. They had just walked in, their faces a thunderous mask of rage and disbelief. Jay's fists were clenched at his sides. My father was surveying the room, his eyes filled with a poison I had never seen before. They looked utterly out of place. Two ghosts haunting a celebration. Our maitre d', a man of immense poise named Julian, was trying to handle them. "Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we are fully committed this evening. Perhaps I could find you a reservation for another time. I want to see my son." My father's voice boomed, turning a few heads. I walked towards them, my steps steady. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The fear, the anger, the hurt, it was all gone. All I felt was a cold, quiet power. This was my house. They were trespassers. "Dad, Jay," I said, my voice level. "You're creating a scene." "A scene," Jay spat, stepping forward. "You steal my staff, you copy our menu. You build this monument to your ego right across the street, and you're worried about a scene." "I didn't copy your menu, Jay," I said calmly. "I took my recipes with me. The ones I created, the ones that made you a rich man." I turned my gaze to my father. He flinched, as if my look was a physical blow. "And this isn't a monument to my ego. It's a monument to what happens when you mistake a workhorse for a doormat. You pushed me out. You lied about me. You tried to ruin me. What did you expect me to do? Open a food truck in the suburbs?" My father's face went from white to red. "This is Peter Gallo's doing. He's in your head. Family doesn't do this to each other." I almost laughed. "Family? Is that what we were? When you stood by and let Jay pin his incompetence and greed on me? When you signed the papers that cast me out without a second thought? You talk about family, but you treated me like a line item on a budget. A cost that needed to be cut." The surrounding tables had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. This was better than any PR Chloe could have ever planned. I leaned in closer, dropping my voice so only they could hear. "You came here tonight to intimidate me, to remind me of my place, but you've made a terrible mistake. You're not in your world anymore. You're in mine. And in my world the quality of your character matters more than the name on the door." I was about to ask Julian to show them out when I decided to play my final card. The nuclear option that Marcus, the lawyer, had been holding for me. "By the way," I said, my voice casual, almost an afterthought, "I would have thought you'd be too busy to come out tonight." "What with your other problems?" Jay looked confused. "What other problems?" "The audit," I said simply. I watched the color drain from his face. "The IRS audit. The one looking into that very creative offshore shell corporation you set up a few years ago. The one you've been funneling consulting fees into. It turns out, when you're building a restaurant with a man like Peter Gallo, he has friends in all sorts of interesting places. Friends who get very curious about financial documents that are sent to them anonymously." Jay staggered back as if I'd punched him. He looked at my father, his eyes wide with panic. My father looked utterly broken. The titan of industry, the patriarch, was just a scared old man. He had built his empire on a foundation of my talent and Jay's schemes, and I had just pulled both pillars out from under him. "It's over," I said. My voice soft but final. "You didn't just lose a chef. You lost everything. Now please leave my restaurant. You're upsetting my guests." They stood there for a moment, suspended in the silent judgment of the room. Then, without another word, they turned and walked out. The door swung shut behind them, and it felt like the closing of a tomb. A wave of applause started at a nearby table and spread through the entire dining room. I didn't smile. I just nodded, turned around, and walked back to my kitchen. I had work to do. It's been a year since that night. Legacies is everything I dreamed it would be, and more. We received a 3-star review from the critic who came on opening night, the highest rating he'd given in a decade. We're booked 6 months in advance. More importantly, we've built a culture. It's a place of respect, of passion, of shared creation. Miguel is now a partner, and his creativity is flourishing. Isabel's wine program has won national awards. We are a family, a real one, forged in a hot kitchen and bound by mutual respect. Across the street, the building that once housed Albert's table is dark. It closed its doors for good about 6 months ago. The sign is gone, leaving a faint, ghostly outline of the letters. It's for lease now. The rest of the Beaumont group crumbled shortly after. The IRS audit was as devastating as Marcus predicted. Jay's creative accounting turned out to be blatant fraud. To cover the fines and legal fees, my father was forced to sell off the other restaurants, one by one, for pennies on the dollar. The Beaumont name, once a symbol of fine dining in our city, is now synonymous with failure and scandal. My father and brother lost everything. Their business, their reputation, their wealth. I hear they don't speak anymore, each blaming the other for the downfall. Do I feel guilty? No. Guilt is for people who have done wrong. I simply took back what was mine. They gave me a choice. I could be their victim, or I could be their consequence. I chose the latter. They say blood is thicker than water. What they forget to tell you is that sometimes, poison is thicker than blood. The relationship I had with them wasn't family, it was a toxic dependency, and I was the host they were slowly killing. My relationship with Peter is an interesting one. We're not friends, not in the traditional sense. We're allies, partners. Our bond is a strange cocktail of mutual respect, shared victory, and a deep, abiding understanding of what it means to build something that lasts. We meet once a month in that same back office at his restaurant. We drink amaro, and we talk business. It's the most honest relationship I've ever had with a mentor. He never once tried to take credit for my work. He just gave me the stage and let me perform. Sometimes late at night, after the last customer has left and the kitchen is quiet, I stand in the middle of my dining room and look out the window at the empty building across the street. I don't feel anger or triumph. I just feel quiet. I didn't set out to destroy my father and brother. I set out to save myself. But their destruction was just a consequence of their own actions, a debt coming due. They built a house of cards on a foundation of lies and arrogance, and all I did was introduce it to a gust of wind called the truth. I learned the hard way that the family you choose, the one you build around a shared table of respect and passion, is infinitely stronger than the one you're simply born into. They tried to erase my name, but in doing so, they gave me the freedom to forge a new one. They wanted a legacy of wealth and prestige. I'm building a legacy of my own, one plate at a time. It's a legacy of integrity, of artistry, and of the simple, undeniable truth that quality, in the end, always wins. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had someone try to take what is yours and claim it as their own, then you know the fire I'm talking about. You know that it's not about revenge, it's about reclamation. It's about standing up and declaring that you will not be erased. If my story resonates with you, hit that like button to let me know I'm not alone, and make sure you subscribe, because my legacy is just getting started, and you won't want to miss what I'm cooking up next.